Today we discuss rookie tiers. We talk which players are most likely to rise and fall out of these tiers with the NFL draft coming, which of these tiers are going to split into, combine, and just how we're really using this concept of tiers to approach our dynasty fantasy football teams and rookie pick values right now. Stick around for all that and more. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. Justin, joined by David and JP. Want to take just a brief moment talking about our channel here, Dino Construction. We've been going strong just under a year right now, close to 500 subscribers. Love all of you who have been growing with us, supporting us. We're not guys that think we are fantasy football experts. We are people who love talking fantasy football and improving ourselves. I personally, David didn't really win any leagues. Did you win any leagues, David? But I won a lot of leagues last year, and I think I can thank you guys for sharpening my win a lot. Maybe David dulled his by sharpening mine. That's why he didn't win. No, a lot of luck goes in. He has the worst luck in playoffs. But yeah, we're just guys who are trying to talk fantasy football, talk strategy, and we try to focus on strategy in the channel here and really just grow and improve with you guys. So if you guys are interested in that, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and stick around for more. Anything either of you guys want to add, David, JP?
Just want to give an analogy that kind of echoes what you were saying. I don't think any of us are going to sit here and say we're experts at this. We keep growing and changing our process. So to me, like if you're in college, you've got your professor. If you need help, you go to their office hours, whatever. They're the expert. We're like your study group. We all know a lot of the same things. We're all learning. We're at different levels of intelligence. So maybe I know this a little better than you, so I can teach you this, but you can teach me something else. So we love to hear from you guys. We love to learn from you as well. Don't hesitate to call us out if you think we're saying something that's stupid, because I think we all view ourselves as, equals. So we love to hear from you guys. We love to learn from you.
Well, JP and I can make trades, so I don't know that we're all equals, David.
Man, going for the heart today, buddy.
Yeah, David, I know how to get a trade done. But no, I think just the three of us, we all have just slightly different perspectives in the way that we approach the game, and just like our discussions behind the scenes before the show, preparing our show sheet and our thoughts and what to deliver to everybody that's listening. I think it's really, really helpful because those discussions that you don't see behind the scenes, that's what's kind of getting us to the final product of what we deliver to you. And a lot of thought goes into that, and there's some arguments and discussions that go on quite a bit. So we try to get the best advice that we can and learn from each other, and we take a consensus. A lot of times we do a 2-3 vote to see just to overrule it and make a decision.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to us rant a little bit about what we do, why we're passionate about it. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already. And let's hop right into rookie tiers. I think really only housekeeping notes we need to mention. 1.75 tight end premium, super flex. So yeah, quarterbacks are up there. JP, it's a long one. Tired after a long day of working, but do you think you can manage to read tier 1 for us?
I think I got just enough energy for it. And tier 1, it's Ashton Genty, and that's it. And if you guys have been listening to us in our one-on-one pick series, you probably expected this. I mean, Ashton Genty is just a superstar prospect. Top 10 probably pick in the NFL draft, it kind of seems like. Might be number 6 to the Raiders. And when you look just at this guy as a prospect, you can separate a player from his offensive line and offense. When you look at missed tackles forced, yards after contact per attempt, when you look at missed tackles forced per attempt, you want guys at least be above 0.2. He's above a 0.4. That's truly elite status right there. His yards after contact per attempt, it's around 5, halfway to a first team after contact. So this guy is truly incredible and a do-it-all back. So there's not any other prospect that we see in this draft class that is a truly can't-miss superstar prospect, and he's pretty much the only guy that stands alone here.
That's why in our previous videos talking about tier 1, if we're tiering down off of tier 1 to tier 2, we've said like a 202 to get to the 102 is probably a fair price to receive, but almost at this point in the offseason, we kind of want a 26 first to go down from the 101 to anybody in tier 2, just because he seems like a sure thing, and we feel like he's a sure thing. I feel like I'm going to say he's a sure thing, and prove me wrong, Genty. Don't do it. Please don't. I have enough one-on-ones. I don't want you to. So That being said, who are the guys in 102 that we are so interested in, David?
We got Ted McMillan, wide receiver, Cam Ward, quarterback, Omarion Hampton, running back. And just real quick, when you were saying we want a 26 at this point in the offseason, we want a 26 first to move down here, doesn't mean that price is going to hold strong the whole way through. We just want to maintain that flexibility unless we get like a blown away by an offer. So don't hold to that if you're trying to trade 101 on the clock. Probably accept a little bit less than that, like we were saying, maybe the 202 or something. But this is a really strong tier as well. It's pretty unique in the sense that there's three guys that all play different positions. Team specific, you might need to stay at the 102 as opposed to moving down a little bit, or maybe you want to try to move up from the 104 to make sure you get the right guy. If we're just talking about a roster that can take on anyone. I like all three of these guys on a pretty similar level right now. I wouldn't blame anyone for having any of these three guys at 102, 3, or 4 in whatever order you see fit. So a really strong tier. I kind of appreciate the positional flexibility within it. The fact that whatever you need, he's here. Unless it's a tight end, then we got some of that later for you.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Jim, if you have a roster where you can afford to just take best player available, you're sitting at 102, you don't have any positional needs, this guy is going to be your QB3, your RB3, your wide receiver 4 or 5, depending on who you're taking, not someone you need to start. Are you willing to move back to the 104 for a future 26 second if you have the flexibility of not needing a specific player in this tier? Is a second enough to move between these players?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty confident in all three of these guys. So I think I'm going to get any second pretty much, unless it's maybe 212 might to think about it. Yeah, I think I'm going to smash that most of the time if I don't have a need.
But when we have that positional need, this is a interesting tier, like David said, because if all you need is wide receiver, you don't have the other needs. If all you need is running back, you have 4 quarterbacks on your roster and you're loaded at wide receiver. Do we see a big gap from this tier to the next tier? Do we think any of these guys are going to fall, and who would be most likely to fall?
I think the guy that's probably most likely to fall it would have to be Hampton for me. I think running back values are the most vulnerable to being hurt due to a bad landing spot in the draft. I mean, a prime example is a guy like Zach Charbonnet. We saw his value drop, overnight just from being drafted to a team that already had a guy that looked like a top 10, top 12 running back in place, especially because running back, their shelf life isn't nearly as long as quarterback, wide receiver. So that rookie contract is very valuable for their value overall. So I don't think that'll happen to a guy the caliber of Omarion Hampton, but there's no guarantee of that.
Yeah, I think I agree with the most likely being Hampton, but I will just say, for whatever reason, there's been some hate on Tet lately. I don't know if hate's the right word, but people have been talking about other players as potentially the wide receiver 1, or talking about why they don't like this or that about his prospect profile. So I think I could see some people talking themselves into moving Tet down. I don't think they should, but I can see that happening.
They're overthinking it, honestly.
I completely agree.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid. He was the wide receiver 1 or 1A to a 1B last offseason, was throughout the season, hasn't done anything to say that he shouldn't be, and he's 6'4", 220. Come on, guys. And moving on to tier 3, it's a doozy. JP, I'm not going to make you read this one. It's a long one, and I know you just worked a long day. I actually had the day off, so I'll take one for the team and read these wonderful running back and wide receiver and tight end and quarterback names. It's a super tier. Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Quinshawn Judkins, Emeka Ibuka, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Shador Sanders, Tyler Warren, and Colston Love. So 3 running back, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and a QB.
It's like a starting lineup.
I just want to challenge you guys to tell me, I want you to pick which players are you sure will be in tier 3 after the NFL draft. I'm curious because I feel confident this is going to split into 2 tiers based on landing spots, draft capital, etc. So I'm going to ask JP first, then David, who are you confident, JP, will be in tier 3 after the NFL draft?
And I hope when I say this, I don't ruin who David's thinking, but I don't feel comfortable locking in any running back just like because what I said, based on landing spot and draft capital, any guy could really fall in theory. I think the guy that's probably the most safe would probably be Tyler Warren. I just think with his profile, no matter where he goes, he seems like a lock to go round 1. And his tight end 1 for me, I don't think the gap's that big between him and Loveland, but I think Warren's the safest guy to remain in this tier right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to answer the question as it was asked, the most likely to stay in tier 3. So I think there's a few guys that have a good chance of moving up to tier 2, so I can't mention them. Same as falling out of tier 3 into a split tier. I think Tyler Warren was one of the 2 names I was going to say, so I'll just say the other one. It's Emeka Ibuka. I feel very confident that he'll be a mid to late first round pick. I feel very confident that he's going to be at worst, a solid NFL receiver, if not better than that. I don't think he's going to get the draft buzz to move himself up to tier 2, and I feel confident in where he's going to go in the draft that he'll remain in tier 3. So I think there's some other guys that have a higher chance of being in 2 or 3.
Give me those guys then, David, because that's kind of what I meant.
I will say a running back here, I do think Trevion Henderson has the best chance to rise into tier 2 from that group of running backs. I think there's a lot of buzz on him. He's got the skill set that we love in today's NFL. NFL round 1 is realistic, but I do think early round 2 is possible. I think wherever he goes, he's going to be a big part of the offense, and that efficiency and explosiveness is something we love in fantasy. The other guy I want to mention, just because we haven't talked about him yet, is Luther Burden, and I think this could go either way. I think he's the most volatile prospect in this grouping here, but the upside is very real. I love Luther Burden as a prospect. He's very much a home run swing, but if he ends up going top 20, we like his landing spot. I could definitely see people moving him up into that tier. Like I said, I could also see him going down into tier 4. So just a really interesting prospect and really fun to watch too.
Yeah, our mock draft, we saw him get a bad landing spot and fall to round 2. So I think that's kind of the way that he can fall into tier 4.
If we split this tier, if we keep this tier in here, just to challenge this idea of this being a tier right now, you guys play Devi, right? Is your Devi 1.75 tight end premium?
I think so, yeah. It might be 1.5. But
Would you be willing to take a second and Colston Loveland for Trevion Henderson in a vacuum in that league?
That's tough because seconds are weird. A lot of them are misses, but also last year I took both Janty and Hampton in the second. So
I think most of the other seconds were probably misses, but yeah.
I'm just saying, like, in Devi, it's really weird to value picks.
I'm more just using this, guys, as a general concept. Say you had these players in a league already, you've done a startup draft, then let's say it's not Devi picks because that's not a relational thing, but are you taking a second to move from Colston Loveland to Trevion Henderson to Tyler Warren to Shadur Sanders? Do these guys actually belong in the same tier, all of them together, or should we probably are we admitting that we just don't have enough information to split it up, but we know it's going to split into 2?
I think probably, but also I would take whoever you're tacking the second onto right now without team needs in consideration, because if you do a little bit of math here, the final player in this tier puts us at the 201. So would I take the 201 in a second? Like, a second's pretty valuable when we're talking about players in this tier, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think Trevion, he's definitely my favorite. Like you said, David, I think he's got the best chance to rise. He'd be my 105 right now. But at 106, dude, I got no idea. So honestly, I would take a second move between any of these guys, except for maybe Trevion. He kind of stands out the one guy I feel the best about. But personally, I like Loveland a lot. I think there's a chance that he's valued higher than Warren a year from now because he's more of that athletic, kind of plays wide receiver, but is a tight end. So I think the gap between Warren and Loveland is a lot smaller than a lot of people might think.
I also want to say that we're talking about taking it to move between these players to keep the flexibility of the 105 over the 201. I'm not moving from the 105 to the 201 for a second right now.
Right.
Absolutely agree with that concept about the flexibility of the pit. And who are the players that are most likely to drop out of this tier then is the last thing. Just since it's such a large tier one. For me, I'll go first. Guys that I'm potentially worried about, either of the tight ends, if they get not either of the tight ends. Colston Loveland, if he gets a bad landing spot to the Colts type of thing, slips into the second round. Any of the wide receivers that slip out of the first round, I think, have a good chance to go into the next tier. And any of the running backs off of what JP said, if they get a bad running spot.
Did you just mention everyone in the tier?
But if I have to pick one guy, I think I'm going to pick Shadur Sanders. I think if he gets a landing spot that we don't like, I think there's been a lot on it. I think it's dependent on the situation. If he slides a little bit out of the top 10, which we've seen in some mock, I think even though he's not the type of guy I mentioned all these other things, I think he's the one that I think I'd have to bet on kind of sliding out of this group potentially where we're taking him a little bit in tier 4, although I think a couple other guys would join him.
Yeah, I think that's fair because if he does fall outside the top 10, there's a good chance he's going somewhere where he's not going to be a starter as a rookie. And then you can't really use him. The guy that I'd probably pick otherwise would be Matthew Golden. I just think when you're looking at everybody's production profile in this whole group, I think his stands out as the worst when you look at his yards per route run and just college production overall. When you look at scouts, I mean, it seems like there are a lot of people like him as wide receiver 2 and first round wide receiver. You're just hearing that all the time. But I just think if he falls to round 2, it's like no doubt in my mind, maybe even it's last pick of the first round, just based on that profile that he has, he's the one I'm going to bump down to tier 4 probably the quickest of anybody. unless it's a running back, like I mentioned earlier, just falling.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about those running backs because I do think there's a very real potential for running backs to fall in general in the NFL draft. Think about how deep this class is. I do think J&T and Hampton are a little different. Maybe Travion's a little different, so they get drafted by the team that just needs them. But even Judkins and Caleb, those guys in the second versus who you might be looking at in the fourth, just at a cost perspective to an NFL team, I could easily see them waiting. If Judkins or Caleb fall to the third into a spot we don't love, it'd be really hard to take one of them over a first-round quarterback or a first-round tight end, even if we don't like their landing spot. A top 40 wide receiver, even if we don't love their landing spot. So I'm going to go with either Johnson or Judkins. I do love both prospects, and I think they're going to be good picks, even if they slide a little in the NFL draft. But that's just how dynasty players think. So if one of these guys falls to the third to a spot we don't love, I think they will fall a tier.
Yeah, I think out of any of those, I'd probably side with Johnson, just because when you look at the combine, he stands out as the one that had the worst probably this whole grouping overall, and which it wasn't terrible. I don't think he's really a loser necessarily, but just compared to these guys, they all did great, and also he doesn't have nearly as much receiving upside as the other two running backs.
Can't disagree with those arguments there. And we're going to move on to tier 4. JP, wanted to give you a short one again. Can you read it for us?
Man, the graphic just looks pretty funny right now, I'm not going to lie, but we got two guys here with Travis Hunter and Jackson Dart, and this is just the pure upside tier. These guys, they got the tools, and they could just be really, really good players in the NFL. There's just question marks for both.
Yeah, we could certainly see, depending on draft capital, either or both of these guys hopping into tier 3. Could definitely see, depending on projected usage, coach speak, GM speak after the draft, Travis Hunter moving up into tier 2. So a very, very interesting tier, a lot of potential. How big is the gap from these guys and how we view them now and tier 3? Is it a massive gap? Is it a future first of a gap? Is it 2 seconds? What do we view it as?
I think it's just an issue of safety. If we knew Hunter was a receiver, he'd probably be in tier 2. Jackson Dart is a first-round quarterback. He's definitely got to be in consideration to go above most of the guys in tier 3. But then there's a chance you get absolutely nothing from Hunter. There's a chance Dart doesn't go to a good spot or get good draft capital. So I think at this point, it's just a safety issue. I do think this tier will dissolve up or down by the time we're actually doing most rookie drafts, though.
Yeah, I mean, if GM comes out after taking Travis Hunter and they say we're not interested in playing him at wide receiver and he's just going to be a full-time cornerback, where's his value set at that point, Justin?
I'm taking him in the third at that point, just on the off chance that he forces his way onto the field at wide receiver. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's why I said GM and coach speak is going to really dictate where he goes. Moving on from this short mini tier here, which I think what David just said, probably it's not going to exist after the draft because Hunter will probably be moved up or down a little bit. There'll be more people in this tier. Maybe they'll still be here. Maybe they'll be in tier 4.
There will be a tier 4.
There will be a tier 4. Numbers will still work the same way they have always worked. But yeah, I'd be shocked if these two players were somehow sitting in a tier by themselves after the draft. We just kind of don't know what to do with them. Tier 5. David, can you go ahead and read those players to us?
Sure. That final picture makes me laugh. I couldn't find one without a background. I didn't have time to remove it. So anyways, we've got Jalen Milroe, quarterback, Trey Harris and Jaden Higgins, both wide receivers, Cam Scatabo and Dylan Sampson at running back.
A lot of upside there. Rushing quarterback, couple wide receivers that we really either like their production profile or crazy combine performance. Stud, speedster running back, and a pass-catching, can-do-it-all bowling ball running back. Do these guys have the potential to end up in the same tier as the iceberg that splits off of our tier 3? So say a few players like we talked about, maybe Johnson and Golden and somebody else fall out of it because we don't like their draft capital. Is there a good chance we could see a couple of these guys in the same tier as them after the NFL draft? And if so, who would be your pick to really move up, not just into tier 4, but into that iceberg super tier, top of the second valuation?
The guy who can move the most is Jalen Milroe, though I don't expect it. If he were to get back into the first, early second draft capital with that upside, with the rushing ability he brings, he would definitely move up. I don't see that happening though personally. Cam Scatabo and Trey Harris both have production that we like. I think they've both got some hype behind their name. So I think if, Harris gets a good landing spot in the top 50 picks-ish, Gold maybe slides a little bit, or Burden slides a little bit, I could see that gap closing. And if Cam Scatabo goes in the second to a spot we like, I think that hype train's going to get a little out of control. So
Scatabo, I think that there's an argument for him to be in tier 4. It's just that there's athletic concerns. He's older, and also there's draft capital questions as well. So with all that considered, it's hard to push him up too high. Personally, just the player himself, the production, I really, really like him. I just think with what he did as a receiver and also on the ground, just there's so much upside with him as a player. The missed tackles force is phenomenal. So like you said, David, round 2 draft capital, and it's wheels up for Cam Scotabo. Even top of the 3rd round through your landing spot, he still could rise up a tier.
Yeah, definitely an exciting group of players. Within these players right now, are we willing to move between any of these players if you had them in a league, had your rookie draft already, for a 3rd at this point? Or do we have any player takes that we wouldn't be willing to move around in this tier for a 3rd for?
I think JP will disagree, but I don't think that's close enough for me to go from Harris down to Higgins at wide receiver. At this point, at least, maybe if draft capital and landing spot could change that, but just based on their profiles, I'd prefer Harris. I think that's probably the only one I wouldn't do, but I would probably go from the running backs to Higgins with the 3rd, just not from Harris. So whatever that means, maybe 2/3 of difference, I guess, is what I'm saying there.
Yeah, it's interesting to see where those 2 wide receivers are going to go specifically. I mean, it's kind of weird because I feel like Trey Harris is viewed higher by the community because of the yards per route run the final season. That's very impressive. But when it comes to draft capital, I've seen Higgins and Trey Harris be pretty darn similar, especially since the combine when Higgins had like a 9.8 RAS or something, I want to say. It was something crazy like that. So I think it probably pushes Higgins to be a top 50 guy for sure. It's kind of how I see Trey Harris as well. So I'd probably take the 3rd and move in between these guys.
Only guy I might not consider taking a 3rd to move to in this tier at this point might be Milroe, just because I have concerns about the draft capital that he might get, the landing spot he might get, and he's probably realistically a handcuff with upside. So I think he'd be the only one I'd probably exclude from that personally. But if you give me 2/3, I'd certainly do it, or God forbid a 2-3 swap would be amazing. Pretty close tier. Milroe to me is the most likely to drop out of this tier, just if he doesn't seem like he has any real path to production. Do you guys agree with that, or is there another guy that really has a chance to drop out of this tier to you guys as well?
I think they all have a chance, but yeah, Milroe would be the least safe here, I think.
Yeah, and I have to go with the running back. I view a little bit lower in Sampson just because he could fall around round 4.
Absolutely, if he does, could be potentially concerning. But a speedster like that in the right landing spot in round 4, don't hate it either. And last tier, we got another big one. Don't worry, guys, I'll read it. Tier 6, we have Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, RJ Harvey, Bashal Tutin, DJ Giddens, Alec Aomanor, Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin, and Mason Taylor. Probably could have included more players in this tier. David was saying he ran out of space, so we had to cut it down. No, he didn't say that, but did say he even added some guys last minute. It's like, I can't exclude this guy. It's a big tier. Right now, there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of hopium and potential. These guys could be the tight end 3 in this draft. These guys could be the RB6 in this class. Still, they could hop Scatabo. They could hop Sampson if they get a good spot. And if these wide receivers get 2nd round draft capital with the hype that they've been getting, if these tight ends, it's a lot of hopium and a lot of talent. What is your guys' guy in this tier? I'm going to start with JP. Only give us one, even though I know you got 2. You can come back with the other one later.
I'm a pivot and to just talk about a guy I've really been rising on, and that's Elijah Arroyo. And a 1.75 tight end premium. I just think that his upside is really, really high. I really, really like his statistical profile this year. It was a late breakout, but he had a torn ACL early in his career, which kind of derailed that early breakout. But with Cam Ward this year, I mean, his ADOT is one of the highest in all of college football for a tight end. He also forced a lot of his tackles forced. GPS data suggests that he's a really, really good athlete as well. Fortunately, he didn't run, but he came in at 250 pounds at the combine. So checks a lot of boxes for me outside of breakout age. But at tight end, I don't care as much. I just really, really like his upside a lot.
And I'm not going to surprise. I'm going to stick with my guy. He's been my guy since I kind of figured out who he was. I didn't even know he was going in the offseason, but once I watched some RJ Harvey, looked at his production profile, I've been very high on this guy since about a month ago or so. 2 months maybe when I first sat down and watched him. Got great vision, very explosive, good out of the backfield as a receiver. Tested pretty well, actually tested better than I expected, like just over a 4.4 if I remember correctly. But ran a bit better than I expected. I just love his vision. I love his patience. He's got a nice jump cut. He's very explosive. Like I said, he's a weapon out of the backfield as a receiver as well. I could see him sliding. I'm very nervous about where he's going to end up going in such a deep running back class. He's a little undersized. He's a little older. He started his career as a quarterback, so there is that excuse built in that he was changing positions. He also had an injury involved in there, so kind of a rocky road through college, which is why he's coming out a little bit older. But I really like the prospect, and I think his game could translate to the NFL really well.
For me, it's pretty simple. It's the guy who's as fast as Devin Achane, and has 20 pounds on him. Bashal Tootin, the combine darling. Same speed, 20 more pounds, not any of those durability concerns. A guy that's running 4.32 and is over 200 pounds. I mean, I'm all in. I think the NFL is going to surprise us and take him in the third round just because of what that ability gives us. Wouldn't even rule out late second, if it wasn't such a deep draft class. But I think with how deep the draft class is, I think third round is the likely outcome. And a fast guy with this speed, this size, I think that the sky is the limit in this NFL, and I think someone's going to give him 55% of the touches, 50% of the touches, and he's going to do magic with them. So I am very excited for this guy.
Be a nice change of pace back in Miami, right?
Not to mention also with Tootin, his contact balance is really, really good as well. He's one of the guys right up at the top end of the class where his missed tackles forced is not quite Genty and Cam Scatterville levels, but it's really not that far off. So when you add that into his production profile as well and the athleticism, there's a lot of upside there. I can't blame you for falling in love with this player, as many of the people have since the combine.
And just want to give a little brief overview of the other players in the tier. Mason Taylor, tight end out of LSU, looked amazing in the combine drills, has been gathering a lot of steam, definite potential to be the tight end 3 in the class, name to keep an eye on, Harold Fannin Jr. This is a guy who was phenomenal, the counting statistics, the advanced metrics, everything, but came in very slow at the combine from a small school in Bowling Green. So draft capital for him is going to be huge, as well as the landing spot. If there's nobody ahead of him on the draft, like where he goes, we're going to be pretty excited. Do you mind giving us a quick overview of this wide receiver, the Stanford Cardinal?
Yeah, Alec Ayomanor, he's a bigger wide receiver at about just over 6'2". He didn't play as a freshman at Stanford, but then in his first season playing, which was his sophomore season, he had over 1,000 receiving yards. He had a highlight game where he's just dunking all over Travis Hunter. I think he had pretty close to 300 receiving yards. It was a great breakout game. And this year, we're hoping to see a step forward. Stanford passing attack just overall took a big step back. His market share numbers were still good, but he was not able to match that 1,000 receiving yards again. But he's a guy with a track background, ran a pretty good 40 as well. So when you combine pretty good production profile with the athleticism and size, there's definitely some upside that he could be a round 2 guy.
It kind of screams Packers to me. I'm sure he's on the Packers draft board with his size-speed combo and age.
And David, can you just give us a quick overview of the remaining 2 RBs we have not talked about?
There's actually 3 of them, but sure.
Oh, there's 3. Oh, you're right. Counting is hard, okay?
That's okay, buddy. We're here for you. We got you. Yeah, we'll go DJ Giddens first. He was, after Bashal Tootin, probably the most impressive combine running back. Tested very well. He's already kind of high on some people's boards anyways. Bit of can do it all. He's not a horrible receiver. He's not, I guess, from what I've seen, he's not someone you're going to split out wide. There could absolutely be the potential for that to exist in his profile. I'm just not sure. I have not seen it personally, but I think he's got a bit of a 3-down back in him. Ollie Gordon had a tremendous sophomore season. He's coming out as a junior, so that was just 2 years ago. He had a little over 1,700 rushing yards. People thought he was going to be the running back 1. Not everybody, but a lot of people did. He just looked so good that year. And then this year, the whole offense took a big step back. So try to separate him from that to some degree, but it just wasn't as good of a season as we hoped. He took a step back as well. So a little bit of concern there. He's also a little bit taller than most running backs. He's, I think, just a hair under 6'2", but someone that I think has some upside for your later rounds, a good dart throw. And then someone that I think we all expected JP to have talked about already is Devin Neal.
Coward.
He's someone JP has talked about a ton. He's someone we all like. He's definitely got some 3-down potential in him. I don't know if he will ever get a chance to lead a backfield, but if he does, he's someone I think can be a regular starter for fantasy for us. Very solid prospect. Not sure he's great at everything, or not sure he's great at anything. I'm also not sure he's bad at anything. So a pretty solid prospect there in Devin Neal.
When we were talking about this, we could mention another 7, 8 guys potentially that have the potential to move here, at least 2 or 3 guys that we know you could make an argument for very easily, no problem. Feel free to let us know in the comments below who you guys think should be here that is not here, etc. Definitely happy to have that conversation with you. We'll be doing deep dives into 4th round rookie sleepers that we are excited to take in later episodes, I'm sure, leading up to the NFL draft. Just keep pumping out content on all these rookies. We're excited to do that. Looks like we got JP's video back, so I think that's a perfect time to say thank you for listening to another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view, and from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.